Okay, Math 1, Unit 2A, Section 4, Axis Reflections with Points. So just like in Section 3, we're looking at reflections, not rotations, reflections. And we kind of look back at what we did, I think, in Section 2. There were similar problems to this. And I think it also said write a rule to describe the transformation, and that's what we're going to be doing. Again, like last time, you don't really need all these points. Pick one. Now, notice that they're not necessarily in the same order. So I'm going to look at point I and point I. So I'm going to write something like, well, I is, let me zoom in some. I is -1, -4. Something happens to it, and I prime turns out to be -1, 4. Now what we want to see is what happened to it. How did it change? The the negative ones stayed the same. But if we look at the -4, it turns into a +4. So we could say, well, this is like I prime is -1, -4, or something like that, right? Whenever you switch a sign, you add a negative to the front. So what we want is, or what I'm going to write in here, I'm going to say, well, this is like my x, and this is like -y, right? So my point formula is x -y. And whenever it's x -y, which reflection does that mean? Is it the x-axis or is that the y-axis? This is the x-axis, so this is reflect over x-axis. All right. Just to help us be able to visualize this, I'm going to do just a little bit of rough graph here. I would be at, I'll make I orange. I is going to be down here at -1, -4. I prime is going to be at -1, +4, which would be up there. And we can see that it would reflect over that line there. That's the x-axis. All right, number 2. Again, we just pick one of the points. I'm going to use D. D is at 2, 5, and something happens. And D prime, something happens there. And D prime ends up to be 2, -5. So what happened? The 2's stayed the same, but the 5 turned negative. So the 2 stays the same, but then it's going to be like a -5 there, right? This is like x -y, so x -y. That again says the x, how did I word it? Reflect over x-axis. And again, we could graph these points and you could kind of visualize where does it reflect, but I'm not going to do that for this one. Number 3, again, we just pick one point. I'm going to use R here. So R is at 0, -2. Something happens to R prime. And then R prime turns out to be 0, 2. Again, we look, the zeros stay the same, so we have a 0 in the front. A -2 turns into a +2, so it's going to be like -2. This would be like x -y, which, just like the last ones, is a reflection over x-axis. All right. I look at 2 points. And again, it doesn't really matter what the points are. You can grab any of these sets of points and they will tell you the same thing. So T, well, here, let's do this without writing it down. I'm looking at my 2 points and I look at, well, what changed in them? The 3 stayed the same, the 2 changed. The 2 went from negative to positive. This is like x, negative y. So just like in the last few, in the last three, this is like a reflection over x-axis. I promise not all of them will be that answer. All right. Now, yeah, on these, so maybe I lied to you. I didn't realize there were different problems. I did lie to you. They're all like this. If it happens to be that the x was negative, like say we had a problem like it was a is at 1, 0, a prime is at negative 1, 0. This would be my x and my y. This would be like negative x, y. So this would be a reflect over y-axis. Okay, really easy to see. You just have to remember that the answer, the letter in the answer, is the opposite of the letter that is there, right? So there says negative x, and it's a y-axis. Over here, we said negative y, and it's an x-axis, all right? So it's always the opposite of what you intuitively think it should be. So, all right, going on. Find the coordinates of the vertices of each figure after the given transformation. Number 5, whenever we reflect over the y-axis, we do negative x, y. So all we need to do here is list our primes, and I could write it out really long, but I think this is kind of easy for us to just go right at and write. We're just going to swap the sign of our x value. So our x value in these are 3, negative 1, and 0. So negative 3 will turn into positive 3. Negative 1 will turn into 1. And I think I said in one of the other videos that anytime you have 0, if you reflect and you have 0, it just stays the same, right? You could say, well, 0 is equal to negative 0, so they have to stay the same. And there's your answer. All right, another y-axis. Oh my goodness, are these all the same? Okay, there is some variation. And again, y-axis, we're going to take a negative x. So f prime will be negative 4, 2. G prime will be negative 3, 4. H prime will be negative 4, 4. And I prime will be negative 5, 2. All right. Hopefully these are very easy, very quick to write down. Number 7. Now we're reflecting on the x-axis, so it needs to be x, negative y, right? Our y switches signs. So w prime will be negative 5, 2, right? Because it's x, y. X prime will be negative 5, negative 2. Y prime will be negative 4, negative 3. And z prime will be negative 2, 2. All right, last up, number 8. Again, we're doing the x-axis, so this is going to have like a negative y. So I'll have u prime is going to be at 1, 3. T prime is at 3, 1. And S prime is at 5, 2. And there we are.